When life gets hard, most people instinctively pull back. They doubt themselves, lose momentum, and start believing the storm will never end. But what if the very challenges you're facing right now are the doorway to your greatest transformation? What if, hidden inside the difficulty, is the exact lesson that will elevate your life? Today, we're diving into Jim Rohn's timeless wisdom on what to do when everything feels heavy, overwhelming, or uncertain. Stay with me until the end because the final message might completely shift the way you see your struggles and the way you rise above them. 1. Accept the reality, don't fight it. Jim Rohn teaches that the first and most transformative step when life becomes difficult is acceptance. Not surrender, not defeat, but acceptance in its truest, Stoic-like form. Many people confuse acceptance with giving up, but the truth is the opposite. Acceptance is the beginning of all power. You cannot improve what you refuse to acknowledge, and you cannot navigate a storm you pretend isn't happening. Life will always bring moments you didn't expect, moments that shake your assumptions, moments that make you question your plans. And it is in those very moments that Rohn insists you practice the discipline of stepping back, breathing deeply, and saying, "This is what is happening. Now, what will I do with it?" When you resist reality, you drain your energy, feeding stress, frustration, and resentment. Resistance blinds you, acceptance clears your vision. Once you stop fighting what already is, you free your mind to understand what can be. That shift opens the door to wisdom. Acceptance allows you to observe instead of panic, to listen instead of react, to study instead of complain. It invites you to ask powerful questions. What is this situation trying to teach me? What pattern is being revealed? What belief of mine is being challenged? What strength am I being pushed to develop? Every challenge carries a lesson hidden inside it, but you can only learn that lesson once you stop denying its existence. Acceptance transforms suffering into information, and information into guidance. It helps you recognize the difference between what is within your control and what is not, enabling you to focus your limited energy on the actions that matter instead of the worries that destroy you. Jim Rohn often reminded people that life does not get easier because you demand it to. It becomes more manageable when you become more aware, more prepared, and more honest with yourself. Acceptance invites that honesty. It turns chaos into clarity. It quiets the emotional noise so you can see the situation from a higher vantage point. It softens the grip of fear because fear thrives in confusion, not in understanding. When you accept reality, you position yourself at the starting line of growth. You gain the composure to make wise choices, the patience to endure temporary discomfort, and the humility to recognize what must change, whether in the world or within yourself. Acceptance is not about liking the situation, it's about empowering yourself to respond to it intelligently. Once you accept reality, you stop reacting blindly and start navigating purposefully. You reclaim your sense of agency. You step into a mindset that asks, given what is my next best move? That single shift, from fighting reality to working with it, is the doorway to transformation. Acceptance does not weaken you, it strengthens you by aligning your mind with truth, and from truth, every great improvement begins. 2. Shift from emotion to strategy. Most people stay stuck because they operate almost entirely from their emotions, especially when life becomes turbulent. Frustration takes over, fear grows louder, anger clouds judgment, and suddenly every decision becomes reactive instead of intentional. Jim Rohn warns that emotion, while powerful, becomes dangerous when it is allowed to steer your actions without the balance of reason. Emotion is a signal, but it is not a strategy. Growth begins the moment you create space between the feeling and the response, the moment you pause long enough to think instead of simply react. This is the heart of Rohn's philosophy, the shift from emotional turbulence to strategic action. Anyone can panic, anyone can complain, anyone can let fear dictate their behavior. But the individuals who rise, the ones who improve, overcome, and ultimately transform, are the ones who learn to slow down their emotional impulses long enough to ask a better question. What is my plan? Rohn famously said, "Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better." That sentence captures the essence of the strategic mindset. Instead of labeling situations as unfair, instead of indulging in blame, instead of drowning in discouragement, the strategic individual channels all that emotional energy into solutions. Strategy doesn't ignore emotion, it contains it, harnesses it, and redirects it. Strategy forces you to examine the situation with a practical eye. What options do I have? What resources can I use? Who can I learn from? What tiny step can I take today that moves me forward? Strategy transforms overwhelm into manageable actions. It replaces the chaos of feelings with the clarity of plans. It turns setbacks into data instead of disasters. When emotion rules, people tend to exaggerate problems, imagine worst-case scenarios, and spiral into inaction. But strategy cuts through exaggeration and focuses on evidence, possibilities, and next moves. The strategic mind knows that momentum doesn't come from waiting for perfect conditions. It comes from acting with intention, even when conditions are far from perfect. When you shift from emotion to strategy, you reclaim your power. You stop letting circumstances dictate your mood and start letting your plans dictate your progress. Emotion may start the fire, but strategy builds the structure. Strategy is discipline applied to thought. It allows you to stay steady when others collapse, calculated when others panic, determined when others retreat. Instead of letting emotions paralyze you, you convert them into motivation. Instead of letting anger blind you, you let it remind you that change is possible. Instead of letting fear stop you, you let it sharpen your awareness. Once you adopt the strategic mindset, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How can I use this?" Strategy creates momentum because strategy creates direction. Strong emotions may shake you, but strategy steadies you. And in that steadiness, growth becomes not only possible, it becomes inevitable. 3. Use hard times as training. Everything difficult in life is preparing you for something greater, though it rarely feels that way in the moment. Jim Rohn believed deeply that adversity is not punishment, it is preparation. Life uses pressure to carve out strength, challenge to sharpen perception, and difficulty to expand capacity. When you face hard times, it is easy to interpret the struggle as a sign that something is wrong, that you are failing, that life is unfair. But Rohn encourages a different perspective entirely, one rooted in the understanding that growth never occurs in comfort. Comfort reinforces your current self. Hardship builds your future self. Every difficulty carries within it a lesson, a skill, or a transformation that you may not yet recognize. When life feels heavy, ask yourself, what is this moment training me for? What muscle, mental, emotional, or spiritual, is being strengthened right now? Perhaps it is patience, the ability to stay calm in uncertainty. Perhaps it is discipline, the willingness to do what must be done even when you don't feel like it. Perhaps it is courage, the inner fire that pushes you to act despite your fears. Perhaps it is resilience, the capacity to bend without breaking. These qualities cannot be learned intellectually. They can only be developed through experience. Hard times serve as a gym for the soul, a training ground where your character is refined and your endurance is built. Rohn teaches that adversity introduces you to yourself. It reveals your limits, but also your potential. It shows you where you are weak, but also where you are capable of extraordinary strength. It breaks old patterns, forces new choices, and shapes the kind of person who can handle greater responsibilities in the future. Life often gives you small battles before it trusts you with larger ones. What feels like a setback may actually be preparation for an opportunity you are not yet equipped to handle. Every struggle increases your capacity. Every challenge teaches you something you will use later, sometimes in ways you cannot yet imagine. Hard times also humble you, and humility is a powerful teacher. It softens your ego, deepens your empathy, and broadens your understanding of others who struggle. It reminds you that growth is not linear and that every strong person you admire was once shaped by moments of difficulty. When you begin to see adversity not as something designed to break you, but as something designed to build you, your relationship with hardship changes. Instead of resisting it, you learn from it. Instead of fearing it, you face it. Instead of shrinking under its weight, you grow stronger beneath it. Over time, you begin to trust the process, recognizing that life's challenges are not random obstacles but intentional training. Rohn's philosophy teaches that the person you become is far more important than any temporary discomfort you endure. Hard times forge strong people, and strong people create better lives. Your future self depends on the choices you make in your moments of struggle. Treat every hardship as training, and you transform every battle into a stepping stone toward your resilience, wisdom, and greatness. 4. Seek inspiration, not isolation. Hard moments tempt us to isolate, but that's exactly when inspiration becomes most necessary and most transformative. When life tightens around you, whether through disappointment, fear, exhaustion, or confusion, the instinct is often to pull away from others, retreat into silence, and try to figure it all out alone. But isolation rarely produces clarity. It often magnifies doubt. What you need in those moments is not withdrawal but connection, not silence but stimulation, not a shrinking of your world but an expansion of it. Jim Rohn often said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." This wasn't a motivational slogan, it was a strategic truth. In times of stress, your environment becomes your compass. If you surround yourself with pessimism, your mind tilts toward hopelessness. If you surround yourself with discipline, optimism, curiosity, courage, and ambition, those qualities seep into you, reshaping your thoughts and redirecting your energy. Inspiration is not a luxury, it is fuel, and without fuel, even the strongest engine stops. When life gets tough, you must intentionally connect with people, ideas, books, mentors, and voices that lift you. Read pages that remind you who you want to be. Listen to thinkers who expand your vision. Talk to friends who speak truth, not just comfort. Study those who overcame what you are facing. Inspiration is not passive consumption. It is active alignment with something better than your current emotional state. Think of inspiration as direction. When you are uninspired, everything feels blurry. Decisions become heavier. Options seem fewer. Doubt grows louder. But when inspiration strikes, even faintly, it clears a small path. You start to see possibilities where before you only sensed walls. Direction then fuels action. Once you know where you want to move, even roughly, your energy shifts from stagnation to movement. And once you begin moving, your emotional landscape changes. Fear weakens, momentum grows, hope returns. The mistake many people make is believing they must feel strong before seeking inspiration, as though they must earn the right to be uplifted. But inspiration is the very thing that creates strength. You don't wait for motivation to read a good book. You read a good book so motivation can return. You don't wait to feel confident before reaching out to someone wiser. The conversation is what rebuilds your confidence. To seek inspiration is not a sign of weakness but of wisdom. It is the recognition that no one rises alone. Every person you admire, every leader, creator, achiever, thinker, stood on the shoulders of people who inspired them, challenged them, or pulled them up when they were sinking. In your most difficult chapters, you must do the same. Refuse isolation and reach outward. Reach toward ideas that lift your spirit, examples that sharpen your discipline, and people who remind you of your capacity. Even one uplifting voice can interrupt a downward spiral. Even one powerful idea can prevent a week of discouragement. Even one conversation can realign an entire direction. If you want to change your life, start by changing what you absorb, because what you absorb becomes what you think, and what you think becomes who you are. Seek inspiration deliberately. Seek it especially when you least feel like doing so. In those moments, inspiration becomes not just guidance, but rescue. 5. Take responsibility, take control. Responsibility is not punishment, it is power. Most people misunderstand responsibility because they associate it with blame, guilt, or burden. But Jim Rohn taught that responsibility is the gateway to freedom. When he said, "You must take personal responsibility. You cannot change the circumstances, the seasons, or the wind, but you can change yourself." He was pointing to a truth that defines the difference between people who rise and people who remain stuck. Life will always bring events you cannot control: losses, disappointments, delays, unfairness, betrayal, unexpected challenges. You may not choose these events, but you always choose your response. This is not just philosophy, it is the foundation of internal power. When you take responsibility for your reactions, your effort, your attitude, your focus, and your decisions, you reclaim the steering wheel of your life. Without responsibility, you drift. With responsibility, you direct. Responsibility is the declaration that your life is shaped primarily by your choices, not by your circumstances. It means acknowledging that while someone else may have caused your pain, you control what you do with that pain. Someone else may have created the problem, but you control whether the problem becomes permanent. Responsibility is not about fault, it is about ownership. Fault looks backward, responsibility looks forward. Fault says, "This happened because of someone else." Responsibility says, "What I do next is entirely up to me." And once you embrace that mindset, something powerful happens. You gain control. Control over your emotions, control over your habits, control over your direction, control over how you interpret the challenges of your life. Control transforms everything. It restores confidence, because now you understand that the quality of your life is not dependent on perfect circumstances, but on your ability to navigate imperfections. It restores clarity, because taking responsibility forces you to focus on what can be changed instead of obsessing over what cannot. It restores momentum, because once you stop waiting for external conditions to improve, you start improving yourself. Responsibility creates an inner shift. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop complaining and start acting. You stop hoping for rescue and start building resilience. Most importantly, responsibility awakens personal leadership, the ability to direct your own life with discipline, intentionality, and strength. Jim Rohn often said that the moment you take responsibility for your own life is the moment your life begins to change. This is because responsibility removes excuses. And once excuses disappear, progress becomes possible. You no longer say, "I'm stuck because of them." You say, "I'm moving forward because of me." Responsibility does not guarantee easy days, but it guarantees empowered days. It guarantees that you will not be a victim of circumstances, but a creator of outcomes. When you truly internalize responsibility, you stop waiting for motivation and begin generating it. You stop waiting for opportunities and begin preparing for them. You stop blaming distractions and begin managing them. Responsibility builds character, and character builds destiny. Life is unpredictable, but responsibility gives you something stable to stand on. Your choices, and your choices, repeated daily, shape your identity, your habits, your relationships, your success, and your future. When you take responsibility, you take control. And once you're back in control, everything changes. Your confidence strengthens, your decisions sharpen, your momentum increases, and your life begins to move in the direction you've always wanted but never fully claimed. Responsibility is the doorway. Control is the reward. Life will always get hard, but every hardship carries a message, a lesson, and an opportunity. When you apply Jim Rohn's wisdom, acceptance, strategy, training, inspiration, and responsibility, challenges stop being barriers and become building blocks. If you're facing something difficult today, remember, you're not being buried, you're being planted. Rise stronger, keep growing, and never forget, your best chapter often begins in your hardest moment.